I thought I'd put together a video showing how to at least put the brake kit on that I've got on my 65 Mustang. I got the instructions for it and I struggled for a couple hours the other day on one side, so I'm going to do the other side today and put it on video, and hopefully it'll help somebody out. I'm going to start with just the plain spindle. There's nothing on here. I've taken everything off. We just got the spindle and the tie rod end here, so we're going to start from there. This is the stuff I've got. I got a dust shield and some various and sundry parts. That's the bracket for the calipers, and the only thing that's missing from this pile is the rotor. The first thing that happens is the dust shield is going to go on just like this. You're going to put it so that you can see the way it's shaped. That's going towards the car, and the openings are going up towards the front. We're going to put the bolts on, and this is important to notice because I did it wrong. The bolts go through the dust shield towards the back. Now my kit, and I guess most kits come this way, there's two different sized bolts. There's a short bolt and a long bolt. A long bolt is going to go through this bottom hole right here because the casting, as you can see, is much deeper here. Up here it's fairly narrow. So this is where we're going to put the bolts through. The instructions then talk about putting these spacers on, these little 1/4 inch spacers. Those are going to go on the 3 short bolts, and they're going to go on the back side back here, just like this. All right, the bolts are in. They're just sitting in here. You can't really tell, but probably way too dark to see in there. There they go. No nuts on the back yet. Next, we're going to put the bracket for the caliper on, and it actually kind of goes between and through this dust shield. And even though I've done one of these, I'm already screwed up with it. So the bolts, I just pulled them all out a little bit so that they're barely hanging on the back side, because this bracket has to go in behind here, but yet come out through this little curved notch, both the top and the bottom. So I'm actually going to try to fit it in there with the bolts out so I can maybe have a little more room. Alright, that didn't work. Anyway, so this is going to work. I'm going to put the bracket on. I'm just going to set it up here first. I don't have the spacers in there yet. Then we're going to put the dust shield on and put the bolts with the spacers through. But once this is already on there, this I think will be a lot easier. So yeah, that was a piece of cake. You can see how the bracket comes sort of on both sides of the dust shield. We're going to now I'm going to try to just force my nuts with or my bolts with the spacers on to hold everything in place. All right, and that's the hardest part, getting that dumb thing on there. Anyway, you can see I've got the bolt with the spacers, followed by the bracket. I don't have my bolts all cinched down yet, but that's kind of the way it's going to look when you're done. We'll go get these nuts tightened down. You want to use a torque wrench. The instructions say to go to 45 pounds, so that's what we're going to do. And when we get that done, I'll go ahead and put the caliper or the rotor on. Next thing we got to do is we've got to pack some bearings, and I got Ford Lincoln Mercury grease as opposed to Chevy or Dodge grease, which cracked me up at the store. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pack these by hand. It's a mess. I'll show you what they look like when they're done. Okay, we're back. There's the grease. There's the greased up bearings. Can't really tell, but what you want to do is on the back side, on the more open side, you want to push the grease down into the bearing until it starts coming out this top edge and actually comes around. You can see it around the edges here too. A bearing packer would be better, but I don't have one, so I use those guys. Anyway, so let's go ahead and put them in the rotor. Here's my cool rotor. Nothing says performance like drilled and slotted rotors. Anyway, this is the orientation we're going to put it on. You want the slots going out so As I'm told by a mechanic friend, this throws the gases out as the wheel is turning. Don't know if that's true or not, but that's the way we're going to put them on. So the first thing you got to do is you got to get that bearing in the backside, the big bearing in the backside. That goes right here. You can see it's sort of tapered. Just drops right in there. Push it down just to make sure it's good and seated. I'm going to wipe my hand off real quick here, and we're going to put the grease seal in. So this, I think, is the grease seal. I think that's what you call this thing. I do know it goes right there. And this is pretty easy to put in. It just kind of sets down in here. And we've got it set in fairly well, fairly flat. And I'm just going to take a hammer and tap it in the rest of the way. You can hear how the tone changes. It's seated down in there against the rotor. So now that bearing is in place. Next thing to do is just get it up on the spindle. Okay, there it is. Looking really cool. It's even cooler with that big red caliper on there. So this is the outer bearing. Again, it's sort of, you can see the beveled shape of it. That bevel is going to go into the rotor, get it in there nice and well. Next thing that goes on is this keeper washer. You'll find there's a slot. There's mine right there. In the spindle, it's threaded. You can just slide that notch right in there. Sort of. Castle nut that'll go on. Or not. Alright, so I had to cheat. I had to use this. I had to use a crescent wrench. You'll see that this thing's really not on as far as it's going to end up going. What you need to do is spin it, and then you can back the nut off a little bit and tighten it further. Spin it again. And this is just helping to seat the bearings. You see which way I'm going, just a little bit further each time on the crank. So I'm here. I'm going to back it off just a little bit. And you can see I went down a little bit further that time. So we're just going to keep doing that until this is tight. It says to do 15 pounds of torque. I don't have a wrench. I don't have a socket this big, so I can't put it on a torque wrench. But we'll just get it to where it's snug, and the cotter pin will line up through here. And that's what it looks like done. There's a. See, I got the cotter pin here. Runs through. Just bend the ends over so they don't come. That doesn't come loose. Let's go ahead and put the. First we got to clean the rotor up, because I don't want any grease on my rotor when I put my caliper on there, because the calipers have already got the pads in it. So we're going to go ahead and clean the rotor, and I'll show you how I do that. So besides all the grease that I put on here, these things actually came with this kind of a sticky packing grease on them to keep them from rusting, I suppose, while they were in shipment and storage, whatever. I'm going to get all that, take all that stuff off. I got some brake pad or brake part cleaner. I guess this is good stuff. I don't know. Anyway, we just spray it on. Get it on the surface. I'm going to take a clean rag that I've got, and I'm going to wipe it down. Try to get them as clean as I can. And you can see that's what came off of them. You know, that could be me, that could be the grease from the packing, I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and do the backside as well. So much to the ridicule of my friends and neighbors, I went ahead and sprung for the bright red powder coated calipers because I like them. Anyway, we're going to put this guy on here. You'll notice that there's a little rubber thing here to keep the pads apart. One thing I noticed on my calipers is these bolts are going to thread into the brackets that we installed earlier. You can't put them on this way. So basically, come on. Well, basically you want to push them out just like I did that one. That one goes when it came out pretty easy. Just push this bolt back so you have some room to get it, get the caliper on there. Now I pushed the little rubber tube that was inside holding the pads apart. I pushed it up. You can see it there coming out of the top. That way I can get the pad on and I can grab it from the back side once I get the bolts lined up. I would have recorded that, but it took 2 hands and a bunch of beating on it. Anyway, the powder coating was actually a little bit thick right here, and it kind of I had to shove it in there pretty good to get it on. But you can see how it clips onto the mount there, and maybe you can see it down there as well. On the back side, the bolts will just go right through, and they will thread into the clip, or the mount, which is actually threaded as well. And that's it. Except for hooking up brake lines and stuff, that's how easy it is.